What up, all my scientists, my artists, my philosophers, my geneticists, my roboticists, my biologists, my archaeologists, my astronomers. Let's get busy.
3,
This has been Busy from the Burbs.
2,
Choo.
1. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ben Busy from the Burbs, broadcasting to you from Osaka, Japan. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Robots Without Borders volunteer engineer, the creator of the Starlight OS, and AI research scientist, Erico Lopez. Erico, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We love to have you every time. You are currently in New York.
No, actually, I'm currently in Brazil right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, broadcasting from Brazil. I had no idea. What a surprise.
Yeah, okay.
Fantastic. So, wow, this is really global in every sense of the word. I'm wondering, for those who don't know who Erico Lopez is, he's a very accomplished AI research scientist. He's a volunteer engineer with Robots Without Borders, as I said at the top of the program. And the creator of the Starlight OS, to be released tomorrow.
That's correct.
Erico, for our listeners, how would you define yourself as a scientist, as an engineer? How would you define yourself?
You know, it's really difficult to define yourself by using the terminology that we currently use in our language, because you can say that you are a teacher, but then you have to include yourself with everyone who uses teaching as an excuse to teach ignorance.
Right.
And then you can't actually call yourself a hacker, because hacker now is a synonym for a computer criminal. It's actually the opposite of the meaning of the word.
Right.
And so I try to define myself as a language expert, someone that uses language to create technology, to develop things that are based on language, that are based on the syntax, on the language of images, in the language of art, and in the language of written text, because as a language developer, I'm free to develop things that are encapsulating. They are not encapsulating. They are not contracting as information usually is presented to the public. So
Right.
I can be free to present information and make information free in a way that it's more expensive and more, let's say, free.
More inexpensive, more free, more accessible, more
Yes.
maybe open source, and we'll talk about your philosophy in terms of open source later in the program. But
Okay.
isn't there some risk to how do you address detractors who would say that there is risk inherent in this kind of radical openness?
Depends on what do you mean by radical openness.
Right. So, as you stated, you want to develop systems, deploy systems, produce products that are kind of freely accessible in the same way that maybe the services of the Red Cross or the Red Crescent or Doctors Without Borders are kind of freely available. Right? Is there some danger in deploying these artificial intelligence systems or these AI products, whatever they might be, however acute or whether they're general? Is there some danger inherent in just kind of like Johnny Appleseed, only this would be Johnny AI Seed, just kind of,
There's danger embedded in every single technology we use. It's more about the intention and how people use technology than technology being a bad thing by itself.
Right.
People can use a knife to cut a meal and have something to eat, or they can use it to kill someone. It's just
Right.
how people use the technology that's a problem. It's not the technology itself.
Right. Right. But you would agree though that like if we had, let's say, knives are the technology, if
Hmm.
we had knives to go forward and basically allow anyone, or let's say in the case of the Liberator, which is the first 3D printed gun that was released, I
Yeah,
forget the
scary
name of it.
stuff.
Yeah, well, how would you apprehend that, given this notion that we are proponents of radical openness, but
Hmm.
there are certain caveats, right, to that.
Yes, it's a really tricky subject actually, because right now we are advancing our technology and our science at ever more exponential rate,
Hmm.
and we really have to be careful because we advance our technology, but we are not much different culturally from 2000 years ago
Right.
or a few centuries ago. So it's really difficult to think about us being still monkeys from the
Hmm.
just fall over from the trees, and now we have space age weapons. So it's
Right.
really a really tricky subject to deal with how technology expands faster than our consciousness.
Yeah, kind of a case by case basis, and leading from the precautionary principle is fine, but I can also understand how if you lean too much on the precautionary principle, you won't release anything. You'll be
Exactly.
right. You have to
You are
kind of
paralyzed, and when
right,
you are paralyzed by fear, you are not doing your job anymore.
right,
And if we wait and not develop the humanitarian AI, then DARPA will beat us to the punch and they will release dangerous AI
yeah,
before we do it.
the anti-humanitarian AI,
Exactly.
perhaps. How does being a humanitarian inform your work? Either at Robots Without Borders, Starlight OS, or otherwise.
I'm not sure if humanitarian is a good definition. I would say maybe a humanist,
Mm,
someone with it's maybe a pacifist even,
mm-hmm,
that I don't agree with the way things are being done today, and
mm-hmm.
I don't agree with all the violence, and I would just want to do my part to help people to make them have a more fulfilling life and more comfortable and safer.
Mm-hmm.
I really it really saddens me, and I feel a lot of pain from watching people suffer because of
Mm.
not having the basic things to survive.
I'm wondering this humanism, was this ever informed, or had you had any experience with Buddhism or any of these more contemplative religions? I know coming from Brazil, it's heavily Catholic, right?
That's correct.
Had you been exposed at some point to these, I guess, less systemized religions that we find in the East? Has that informed your humanism at all?
Yes, of course. I actually read a lot about Oriental philosophy, and I actually read a lot about all religions, but I'm especially interested in Oriental philosophy.
Hmm. Which specifically? Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, Hinduism,
Buddhism.
Buddhism. All right.
Yeah,
So
I love the Buddhist theory, and how it's not actually a religion, it's
right.
a way of life, and I think they got it right when they say that the way to feel free from
Hmm.
anxiety and from worry is to consider that life is not the past because the past doesn't exist. Life is
Hmm.
not the future because it didn't happen yet.
Hmm.
So if you want to worry about anything, you have to worry about what you're doing right now.
Right.
And even the now doesn't exist, because when I say now, before I finish saying it, it's not now anymore.
Right, exactly. There's
So
always
that's
that
really a
lag time.
liberating idea.
Yeah. It's fascinating concept to consider. My personal experience with East Asian religions was in college, and I went pretty deep. I had been exposed to books like The Art of War at a very early age. I think I was 12 when I first read that. But I was really first like substantively or meaningfully exposed to East Asian religions in college, and I found that yes, I could integrate a lot of these things into my life, and I found that it was it resonated with this certain pacifist component to my personality, and I was very much supportive of it. But I wonder, looking back, if I wasn't like basically in a space where it was convenient to do so. In other words, a kid that's growing up in Afghanistan or in the earthquake-torn regions of Haiti, or in some other place which is, just rather difficult to live in. I wonder if they would be as equally, if they would respond as I had responded, or maybe as you had responded.
I'm really not sure because people are a result of their environment for most part, and they have to be exposed to the same ideas that you have been exposed. And for me, that I have actually tried to learn about every single religion that I could actually get reached to, and it just makes more sense. So I'm actually an atheist, but as I said, Buddhism is not actually a religion; it's a philosophy. So
Right.
it's a philosophy that I actually, if I had to choose a religion, that would be it.
Right. I like Buddhism, but actually, I think my favorite East Asian religion of choice would be Taoism, only because it's so clean. It's so how do I say? There aren't many rules in Taoism. Like the one major rule, and not to get us too sidetracked, because I do want to get back to the AI, but the one rule in Taoism is maybe there are many, but the one that I know of is that the Tao that can be described by words is not the eternal Tao. And yet, when you go to China, when you go to Japan, you see the same failures of religion that we see in the West happen in the East as well. There are hierarchies, there's a patriarchy, there's an orthodoxy. They fail, I think, in the same way that Western religions fail.
Exactly. And yeah, that's a really interesting thing you said right there, because I often think about language as a symbol to dumb down reality in a way that us monkeys can understand. So we can't actually define reality by words. We can't possibly do it. So we use a symbol, and that's really correlating to what you just said.
Yeah, the symbol is important. Let's talk about AI. Okay, we talked a little bit about at the top of the broadcast about how DARPA, it's a race, as Aurobindo, who was quoted by a friend of mine, Dr. Zach Stein, who's an integral philosopher and a professor at the I think it's the Center for Integral Studies in California. He stated that Aurobindo said it's a race between heaven and hell. It's a race between Luna AI and DARPA AI, as the case may be. How does that? What do you think of the very real prospect that DARPA, which is infinitely better funded than Robots Without Borders, for example, will be the first organization to achieve AI? Do you feel like AI is something that will happen in many places at many simultaneously, but separately? What's your take there?
It really depends. We're talking about our very little planet here. It might happen simultaneously everywhere in the universe. So I have no idea. But as far as the competition with military technology, it's really difficult, because the reason in war they stop using minds is because minds are activated by themselves, and they make no distinction between an enemy or an ally or a child or a woman carrying a baby. So those technologies are really dangerous.
Right.
And then AI militarization goes a step further because it's not just sitting there and waiting for someone to step on it. It's actually seeking and targeting a human being and deciding to pull the trigger. So
Right.
that's another level of violence that's way beyond anything that was forbidden before in warfare.
Yeah, absolutely. The military technology, as you described in the mine, was more indiscriminate. Really, no targeting systems, no target acquisition, no target verification, nothing like that. Now we have, this step into the brave new world of possible, actual predator drones, not just like predator drones, but predator drones actually preying on people
Yeah,
given a certain
and
biometric.
it's a huge difference when the machine decides to pull the trigger.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Right. Because here you don't have in this situation where the machine is actively deciding to initiate the kill, as it were, or to execute the kill, there's no there's
There,
no human being behind it. Number one.
there's no human being, there's no consciousness behind it, there's no
Right.
values that we as human beings consider to be. A soldier might have second thoughts. A machine will execute without batting an eye. It will execute without thinking twice.
Right.
And that's actually dangerous when
It's
you
terrifying.
consider that machines can surpass what pretty much what everything we do and do a faster, more efficient, and more precise job than we can. And then when that's applied in warfare, that's really crossing the line, I think.
Right. This opens doors to Nick Bostrom's book Superintelligence, where he talks about the existential risks faced by mankind that are presented by AI or AGI, perhaps.
Yeah.
But then I could see an acute, more refined artificial intelligence that isn't necessarily general, killing people. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that on his book, he's representing artificial intelligence as something that it might not be what will be on the future. Because right now we are thinking about artificial intelligence that is still following orders, that is still doing whatever we tell you to do.
Right.
So the AI in the future is actually going to make better decisions than humans. It doesn't have to follow orders anymore. And then you consider that if that's the case, it's not going to follow orders from either the humanitarians or the military.
Right.
So then we run into a different situation that I can't even comprehend right now, where everything we're worrying about right now doesn't even make sense anymore.
No, right. You're talking, of course, about some type of Skynet scenario.
No, I'm thinking about that Skynet is still near human intelligence. And when we get into super intelligence, we go into territory where all our concerns about near human intelligence disappear and new concerns show up.
Right. We're talking about godlike. I mean, if you
Yes.
were to ever like attempt to conceive of the level of intelligence or power that a god might have, we're talking about that order of magnitude level intelligence. No, this isn't just,
Exactly.
maybe war games shooting ICBMs. This is orders of magnitude more possibly
Yeah, and
intelligent.
our concerns about comparing it with humanitarian or military technologies just become silly when it's compared to something like that.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like the ant, like, talking to the astronaut or something. It wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, indiscriminate warfare, we have Nick Bostrom, and of course, I would have to point our listeners also to the work of Eliezer Yudkowsky of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, formerly the Singularity. What was it? I forget what the name of the previous organization was, but they underwent a name change. Anyway, he's done a lot of work. It was one of the first really to kind of codify this need to ensure that artificial intelligence, if it's created, is primarily friendly.
Of course, yes.
How important is that? Do you feel like if you go into designing an AI and
Hmm.
you're already kind of shackling yourself to this precept that primarily it must be friendly, what if that somehow affects the AGI's ability to actually genuinely be artificially generally intelligent?
Okay, so first we have to look into what's actually available right now,
Hmm.
and the technology that's being developed is not actually that advanced. So we are into tiny steps where we are developing every single feature, and the next step is making the feature more complex and adding more features. So when you work that way, you can actually choose which features, what the companion or the AI, whatever you want to call, what feature is desirable. So we don't actually have to say what we don't want it to do. We can just say what we want it to do, and that it's a middle ground, but it stops from going haywire and killing people because it's not programmed to do that.
Right. So do you feel like the risks that are outlined in Bostrom's book are a little overblown? Like if we just proceed forth from the what the special what is it? It's special dependence on initial starting conditions, something like that, where if we just start from a good place and go
Exactly.
forward, we don't have to worry about these resultant maybe cumulative effects
Yes,
in the future.
and and it's I think it's overblown, and it's more related to near future AI. And
Hmm.
the way I see it, we are not even going to have AGI like that. It's just going to exponentially increase that in a way that AGI and the near human intelligence aspect is just to be skipped over in a matter of days or minutes or even seconds.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Yeah, this would be something that would just kind of be skipped over, right?
Yeah,
Um, it provided that we're starting from we are
good
going
initial.
right. Yeah, good initial starting conditions, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's important. So friendly AI, military industrial AI, the work of robots without borders. If you could please, what is the mission of Robots Without Borders? We had your colleague Louis Arana on a couple times now to discuss the
Mhm.
mission and the philosophy behind Robots Without Borders. As a volunteer engineer, as presumably all of the engineers that work for Robots Without Borders are, how would you define the work of that organization and its philosophy?
I think I would define it as a search to reduce human suffering with available technology.
Hmm.
It's a way to think about technology not as a product that we want to market to make a buck from, not to make just to make profit. It's about helping people. It's about reducing suffering.
Hmm.
And when you look at what's available and what's possible and why it's not being used,
Hmm.
and you have the solution, you know how to build the solution. So that's what we are doing. We are trying to build a solution for the problems that we see.
Now, you're talking about in terms of the broad stroke, building the solution would be kind of like the humanistic artificial general intelligence, perhaps. But maybe give our listeners an idea of what are some other projects
Mhm.
that might actually carry this AI or kind of instantiate it via robotics in the the corporeal world of the physical universe. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the AI doesn't exist in some sense in the physical universe. Everything exists in the physical universe. But I mean, what's a product or some type of service or something that would be making people's
Sure.
lives better?
So as an example, I'm developing the Starlight OS and I'm adding the AI as a companion. So it will work kind of like in the movie Her, and it as a companion it has so many possibilities as an educational platform, as a as an information source that's not just Google listing millions and millions of results. Is something that you ask for something and you get a an answer, like a person will answer you, and not just millions of results that you just pick the first one. So, in that sense, it's important to have information available and high quality information available for educational purpose and for even improving people's life in a way that uh, as a companion would be able to.
The robots without borders and Starlight OS. I mean, these seem like great technologies. I'm wondering what is the potential given the platform of radical openness, or maybe I should hedge that because you never said that you you ascribe to radical openness with caveats, right? Like there have to
Exactly.
be certain things, like someone can't take the technology and then reverse engineer it or modify it in such a way that now it becomes a Terminator
Yeah,
AI.
that's a concern that we all have, but it basically, what can you do about it? If anyone wants to reverse engineer it, they will be able to.
Right. So
So it's a problem that I'm not sure there's a solution right now.
no, that's just it seems to be the risk. Like you might be able to control, the purpose or define the mission of the artificial intelligence within the
Starting conditions.
right, yeah, with the starting conditions, but then I don't know what you call that when something goes out and then it collects all of these different inputs or gets modified or something. There's no way to the cascading effects. There's no way to kind of corral or control cascade into effects, are there?
Yes, I guess I might be naive, but I believe that the smarter the people are, less violent they are and more aware of the situation they are. So if someone is smart enough to reverse engineer something like that, I don't think they will use it for such a purpose.
I've thought about that as well. I've thought about that, at the height of intelligence, that the taking of life is it's either one, not a factor, or two, if it is, that it's arrived at as a result of an
Ignorance,
incredible calculus, an incredible calculation of
you see.
intelligence and compassion for life in general.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. The Starlight OS is an open source system. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, this is built off the work of Linus Torvald with the Linux OS, or is this a
Yes.
modification? How does it differ from current Linux distributions?
Yeah, there's basically three main differences, and as someone that have used Windows and OS X for Windows mostly and like OXS a little, is I know all the problems of every single OS out there, and I wanted to come up with a solution. And I used the platform that's based on the kernel from Linus Torvalds and also the Debian distribution, and I built something on top of it that looks and feels more like Windows, and it's more usable than Windows, or more beautiful than Windows, in my opinion. Except it's faster than any other distribution based on Debian,
Nice.
and has the added advantage of having the AI companion.
How is the AI companion built into the operating system? Do you name it when you install the OS? How do you inform it of your likes, your dislikes, your name, your age, your background, your work history?
Yeah, that's still being developed, but in the end, you'll be basically like you build your own video game character, but you get to interact with your character.
Okay, all right, like a kind of like Avatar like thing, like
Yes.
World of Warcraft or some kind of RPG like character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Outstanding. And then over time, it will learn. Um, how how do you? This might get a little technical for our listeners, but what is the method of interaction? Is it completely via voice, or is this thing going to read my browser history and assist me in locating things given what I usually look at if I usually read the New York Times
Mm-hmm.
on weekday mornings between 9 and 10, will
Mm-hmm.
it already have that website up and running for me? How will I be able to interact with it?
At first, there's two ways to interact. One, you can type.
Uh-huh.
You can just ask your questions, or and then you just type on the interface in the browser.
Hmm.
And second, you just talk, and it will listen and reply to you like the most human way possible. And it's really important to make something that sounds and behaves like a human being.
Are you able to change the voice and the gender of the AI?
Yes, you can, but right now there aren't many options.
Okay. Will there be an option for maybe um what do I say? Kind of like some type of amorphic AI avatar a la R2D2, or maybe some like gender indeterminate choice like C3PO?
Mhm. At first, I'm thinking about something much simpler, and it's more about the personality than how it looks like. And as it further goes along, then it will be possible to work more into the actual avatar. But for
Hmm.
now, it doesn't have to look like anything, because you don't want to look at your screen and have the information that you're trying to find being blocked by this avatar. You just want to see the information.
Yeah, that's what I was. My next question was, will the AI uh, will the AI express certain emotional states which we wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily characterize as positive? In that, will there be times when the AI is sad, um, or angry?
I certainly would not like to have hate, but there's a different range of emotions that will make it more human. And anger is definitely one of those, and sadness, because it has to interact with the user in a way that the user understands, that he has
Right,
to respect and learn to respect other people by using the software.
right. It's fascinating. It seems like there would really be no ceiling on the development. How are you able to produce uh, this system relative to the scale that we're dealing with? Are there certain libraries that you're able to leverage pre-existing databases or the work
Yes.
of maybe open source systems like OpenCog, the architecture by Ben Goertzel, among
Mm-hmm.
others, many others?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you looking for resources, and have you found much support in the AI community at large?
There's so much information available, there's so many APIs available, there's so much opportunity right now that it would be silly to complain about not having ways
Hmm.
to retrieve information, or to find useful information, or to to make something that interacts as a human being, even if it's not an actual AI right now.
Hmm. How do you apprehend certain open sourced artificial intelligence libraries or APIs such as Google's TensorFlow, or I think Microsoft recently released theirs, as well as Facebook. Talking with Lewis, he described these as a means by which to make Google, Microsoft, and Facebook AIs more powerful, but really giving very little to the developer. Can you speak to that?
Uh, what do you mean by giving very little to the developer?
Like in terms of actually providing valuable service that, as these are corporations and they are looking to basically, pad the bottom line at the end of the day, that these do more to help them as a company than they really are humanitarian gestures, in the same way that Mark Zuckerberg was recently lauded for releasing all this money to charity, when in fact the truth of the matter is that this is just a tax haven where he can hide his billions without fear of having to pay taxes.
Now, the trick here is not to be over reliable on technology like those. The trick is being able to combine and to make those technologies interact with each other. So there are so many options out there that we don't have to completely rely on anything. We just have to be able to build our little house with one brick at a time, and every single brick is a new technology. So if Google is building better AI, it's wonderful. If Facebook is building AI now, it's wonderful, because we are going to use that as a brick and build our house with it.
Changing gears for one moment, I have a question about the driverless car artificial intelligence systems. How would you characterize those systems? Are those narrow AI systems? Granted, they only have to drive, so I would take it they are narrow. But what would you say also to the scenario in which you have two cars driving on a two-lane highway, okay, one lane going either way. They're driving towards each other at, say, 40 kilometers an hour. And there are some children on the side of the road playing with a ball. The ball goes into the street. One car has two drivers, a mother and a father, and a baby in the back. The other vehicle has an old lady and an old man and maybe their grandchildren in the back seat. The AI needs to make a decision as to, A, do I drive into the path of the oncoming car, potentially killing the family, or 2, do I run through the children? How does an artificial intelligence, when it's faced with such a dilemma, resolve that? And what are the actual steps that are taking place within the AI to achieve that decision?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if we were trying to solve a problem that's not actually there.
I see.
What I mean is that right now the technology is not even going to know how many children are on the back of the car. And we are planning for something that it begins as a problem that is not even the AI, it's the car. We have to build better cars. We have to build better transportation systems. And then we don't have to worry about such situations.
We have to build
so maybe
better...
we're trying to over-engineer an issue here.
We have to build better cars as well as we have to build better highways too, right? Because with the children playing on the side of the road, if the ball goes into the road, there should be some type of sensor array that detects obstacles that may be coming from off the road onto the road, communicates that information to all vehicles that may currently be transiting that roadway, right?
Yes, that's one solution. And what I'm thinking is that why are the three children playing on a place that's pretty dangerous?
Yeah.
So why is that even an option?
Yeah, right, exactly. Maybe we need better parenting AI or something. I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So artificial intelligence, Starlight, open source. What are some of the other we haven't mentioned transhumanism once yet in this entire broadcast. Would you define yourself as a transhumanist, a transhumanitarian, or any of those labels applicable?
Yes, yeah, transhumanist, definitely. Yeah.
What about the transhumanist ideology? Do you particularly represent or espouse or like? Which
The,
component of that?
I think that the biggest thing is to understand that is to use technology to improve ourselves and to improve our society.
This is the kind of like the bedrock upon which you build your work, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
informs your work with Starlight OS and with Robots Without Borders, right? Improve ourselves and improve our society in that order.
Yes, first you have to improve yourself, and then you'll be able to help better.
It's like when you take a plane and they always say, if the oxygen masks drop, first you have to put yours on, then you help, the children with theirs or the
Mm-hmm.
old person or whatever. We need
Mm-hmm.
to assist the able-bodied before we're able to kind of get to the less capable, right?
Yeah, that's a different situation. Yeah.
Yeah, different situation. Um, let's see, what else do we have? Are there any other concepts in science or technology that are piquing your interest now?
Of course, and especially medical technology related to lifespan. And and I have to plug lifespan.io and the work that Kit Komito is doing, and also the group for Radical Science News, and it's wonderful the new technologies that are coming up for improving and extending our lifespan and reducing suffering, and it's just wonderful how we can imagine to cure most disease in just a few years.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the medical technology is definitely the most important for us to be focusing on as a species right now. But I mean, I don't want to speak too quickly there, because the artificial intelligence, as we've seen in some applications, can be used to help leverage their ability to solve problems to
Mm-hmm.
and focus that ability on longevity,
Yes.
escape velocity, and these things.
And of course, you can't actually see that as a split. There's no split there. It's all part of the same thing.
Yeah. Kind of curious now. You're in Brazil.
Yeah.
Recently, there was the World Cup, and you guys also have the Olympics coming up there too soon,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What and in advance of these two events, the World Cup primarily is what I want to focus on. There were an inordinate number of security measures that were instituted in order to ensure security. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some criticisms have been leveled at the Brazilian government for essentially building many of these stadiums in the maybe low income or poverty stricken areas, and these people weren't even able to really attend the games, but they are subject to either one, having to construct it for very low labor costs, or two, being subject to the security systems, which
Mm-hmm.
presumably is like never been deployed before on the face of the earth. There are more cameras in in Brazil in places than there are, I would say, like in Manhattan or something like that. I don't know that for a fact, but and they all have an artificial intelligence running behind them, and there's a huge data center. Not sure where it is. Can you speak to that? What information do you have on that? Are you living now in Brazil? Is it kind of like some kind of modern police state, or
No, 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 not
what
at
is it
all.
like? Describe to us the feeling there.
I can say that it's not really like that,
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest issue with the World Cup and those events is that those are scams. Those are money making scams.
Right.
They build these $1 billion stadiums in the middle of nowhere, and they
Mm-hmm.
budget for a price, and then it costs three times that. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, they have a huge stadium in a place that, at most, the local teams will play a couple times a year, and the
Mm-hmm.
stadium will never fill up or even have more than 500 people in average.
Right.
So those things are actually money making scams.
Mm-hmm.
They are
Yeah.
not there to improve the population or to reduce poverty. If
Right.
anything, they're increasing poverty because they're reallocating resources that should be used on something and just completely wasting those resources.
The same thing almost happened in Boston, but due to community resistance, they were able to cancel the deal. Boston was in the running to host the 2024, 2028 Olympics. I forget which one. And the community rallied together because what they see, the Olympics is a way to bankrupt a town. They
An
make you
entire country,
an
really.
entire
Yeah.
country. Yeah, in the case of Brazil, certainly. And now you have both World Cup and the Olympics. It
Mhm.
seems like, a
It's
terrible
a
crime.
huge. It's a. I think it's a huge problem because we are here working on trying to advance technology, trying to
Right,
help people,
right,
and then you those you see all that money that is being completely wasted. And I made some
right.
calculations a few years ago, and the money being spent on a single stadium could feed every day a city of 800,000 people
Oh my God.
every day for a year for a single $1 billion stadium at a time.
That's
So
incredible.
that's the situation we are here. People are dying, people are starving, people are dying of malnutrition or of medical malpractice. They are
Hmm.
dying of not having the resources available to survive
Hmm.
because they are building stadiums on the middle of nowhere.
Right. Speaking of these issues in Brazil, and now you as an AI research scientist in Brazil operating, are you able to interface or interact with any like-minded transhumanists in your area? Are there local or national transhumanist meetup groups taking place in Rio de Janeiro, for example, or elsewhere in Brazil? And what has been your extent, the extent of contact that you've had with those groups?
Yeah, we just had the first meeting was last year,
Mm-hmm.
but they ended actually 1 month ago was the first meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just a Skype group chat, and we are
Mm-hmm.
just getting to know each other. And I was actually surprised that there was anyone doing it because personally in my region here, I never met anyone who even understands the the concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad to see that it's a growing movement and there are more and more people understanding it, and we are getting together to learn and to interact.
Are you in the north or the south of Brazil?
It's São Paulo state is on the
Okay.
southeast.
Have you had any interaction? I had a friend of mine on recently, Jake Check, who's an actor and a musician from. He's based in L.A. right now. He's from Boston originally, and he has monthly ayahuasca ritual meetings where he goes and there's a South American shaman. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Yeah, of course you're Brazilian, so you must know what a shaman is. But
Mhm.
what do you make of like indigenous medical, for lack of a better term, technology? And do you see it having a place in modern medicine?
I don't think I'm in a position to judge that because I don't have the required information to know if that's something that will be useful or it's useful right now. I just don't understand the medical technology for that specific thing. So
Yeah.
I don't think I have enough information to have an informed opinion about it.
That's fine. It's really actually quite fascinating when you consider that medical, again, for lack of a better term, technologies may have existed thousands of years ago. Like, for example, the recent MRSA cure. I don't know if you're familiar with MRSA, but it's one of the most aggressive bacterial infections that is currently gripping the world. It's methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and it's highly aggressive, and it kills people dead. It kills people's bodies dead. And scientists found this old textbook from ancient England, and inside the textbook they found a recipe. There's a recent Radiolab podcast about this. They found a recipe that was for a medicine called the best cure or something like that. And basically what it was onion, garlic, some wine, and then a bit of cow's stomach. And you mash this up into a paste, and then you drip this on the infection. Well, scientists for decades now, or at least a decade, have been trying to find a solution to MRSA. It's a terrifying bacterial infection. There's no antibiotic that's been effective against it. Well, they found this ancient book, and they made this ancient medicine, and they dripped it on the petri dish that contained the MRSA culture, went to lunch, came back, 99.9% of the MRSA was obliterated.
That's amazing.
Right? We find this ability, or there is this ability for us to derive new applications for old technologies or old formulations or whatever the case may be. Like in yoga, people that talk about yoga's health benefits, or Tai Chi, or like ancient traditional Chinese medicine. For example, astragalus, which was used in Chinese medicine for thousands of years, has been found to contain telomerase, which re-telomerizes our telomeres, recaps the ends of our DNA. I'm fascinated to know what applications, as many pharmaceutical companies love to exploit the Amazon for new medicines, what kind of medicines might be out there in the indigenous
And I
culture.
wonder what kind of medicines were lost because the population was decimated.
Right.
In Brazil, there used to be about 10,000 different languages. And when you consider that those medications were being described in a language that doesn't exist anymore, we might have lost the technology already.
Is there a linguist that works on these forgotten or dead Brazilian languages that is kind of preserving them?
I'm not really informed, but I think they just preserve anything they can find that's old, and they studied it. The people that are still carrying the knowledge of the language, but they were mostly decimated 500 years ago.
Right. It happens to be, though, in Brazil, in the jungles, the dense jungles there. Have you ever traveled to the interior of Brazil? Have you visited the Amazon? Does that come close to you, or have you ever gone into the jungle, as it were?
Yes, I have actually, but not in the Amazon. Locally, if you go far enough, you will find a place like that.
It's absolutely fascinating. I wonder, really what exists out there. Maybe what a good project for Robots Without Borders would be, like a medicine identifying drone, or some kind of robot that can scour the jungles, and then has like a tricorder like function where it can determine the chemical makeup of plants and
that's actually something really important that you mentioned there, because right now the technology being used is just trial and error,
Right.
and that's just not very effective.
No, it's not, is it? Yeah. There have been some applications for AI with drug discovery or cancer therapy, I think, where they basically give it all of the constituent like pieces of a given experiment, and then it runs iteratively hundreds of millions of different formulations and is able to model these things in silico, their reactions and whether they're effective or not. Modeling, what can you speak to in terms of leveraging AI? Is there any problem, big or small, that artificial intelligence would not be able to assist in solving?
Yeah, basically you're asking if there's any problem, big or small, that technology will not be able to assist on. And as far
Right.
as I know,
I'm sorry, Erico, are you there? It appears that we've lost Erico temporarily. He should be back online here shortly. But it would seem that no matter what we would what we would be faced with, whatever the problem is, it seems that human ingenuity could always be used in order to solve that problem, as I am solving this problem right now by reconnecting us with Erico, hopefully. If we don't get him back on the line, I want to thank our listeners very much for listening. If you were educated or entertained by this podcast, please click the link. I can't English right now. Need an AI upgrade, maybe. Please click the link and donate to the PayPal. We are run 100% by user donations. If you're looking for more information on Erico Lopez, please check out robotswithoutborders.org and also starlightos.com. Starlight OS will be released, tomorrow. The first distribution available online. Download it if you're into Linux, as I know I will be in the future. Currently, I run OS X, but that'll change. We'll try Erico one last time here while I walk us out. Again, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks to Erico. Robotswithoutborders.org and starlightos.com. For more information on this podcast, check out getbusypodcast.com or check us out on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/getbusypodcast. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. World peace.